The Senate will now come to order. The Pledge of Allegiance will now be led by Chief of Staff Thornton, followed by a moment of silence and reflection.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing for a moment of silence. You may be seated.
The clerk will call the roll. Please correct the pronunciation of your name if it is incorrect.
Alaco. Anderson. Ashmore. Baldinger. Brazier. Costello. Santiago Cedillo. Churchill. Colum. Koviak. Creedon. Cumby. Zapolito. Davis. Dorsey. Dorsanowski. Erler. Freer. Fry. Govan. Gay. George. Gopel. Hopkins. Grant Hunter. Zanasia Hunter. Iftikhar. Jacobson. Cassetti. Keenan. Kern. Kirby. Lopsley. Lewis. Matthews. Miles. Sams. Sanders. Spurgeon. Silkert. Talaka. Von Cannon. Walker. Wizenant. Watley.
With the quorum being present, is there a motion to approve the Journal of April 2nd, 2025 as found online? Is there a second? Without objection, so ordered. We are now in line for general orders of the Senate, beginning with reports from Senate leadership. Speaker Pro Tempore Miles, you are recognized to give a report on the Rules Committee. Also, y'all might notice the new setup. If you have questions now, you're going to use those microphones at the end of the aisle.
Hi guys, Rules this week met on Monday at 7 p.m. We went over 7 pieces of legislation that you guys will be hearing later today, and we are going to resume our normal meeting time of Sunday at 5:30. I yield to questions.
The Speaker Pro Tempore yields her time to questions. Are there any questions? Seeing none, thank you. We will now hear a report from the Academics Committee. Are there any representatives present? Senator Gay, you are recognized.
Hi, y'all. Chairperson Koviak couldn't be here because of an employment obligation, but academics met at 5 p.m. yesterday in the LSC. We reviewed 3 pieces of legislation, 2 of which were found favorable, 1 was found unfavorable, and then we just discussed the importance of being present. So, yeah, I yield to questions.
The Senator yields her time to questions. Are there any questions? Seeing none, thank you. We will now hear a report from the Finance Committee. Chairman Matthews, you are recognized.
Hey everybody. So Finance Committee met, I guess technically twice since our last meeting. We met on Friday at 3:30 p.m., our usual meeting time. We reviewed $14,835.59, and of that approved $13,150.59. We also interviewed 2 comptrollers. We interviewed Jackson Pitts and Cy, blank on your last name, Cy, I'm sorry. But we approved them both. They're both very great candidates, and I will say, we interviewed 11 candidates for comptroller, and though we denied one, I will say this is definitely the best crop of nominees that we've had. I guess I've only been here this is my 2nd year, but they have all been very outstanding, and so I commend Ashley for that. That's good stuff. I don't actually see her. Anyways, so we also approved the the budget for the internal budget for this year that was approved, and then we found SBL 11710 unfavorable for one line of it. It was the $10,000 limit, and we are about to introduce an amendment to that, which is just going to amend that to say that you cannot request over $10,000 for non-university vendors. The reason why that line was put in there in the first place was because the university, there's legal and technical reasons why the university cannot essentially pay clubs over that $10,000 limit. But the university can reimburse other areas of the university for amounts greater than $10,000. So the Koger Center, for example, if a club wanted to do an event at the Koger Center, that's usually $12,000 a pop, and that's a lot of money. And because that's a university vendor, that can be funded. So that's all that amendment is. That's the only reason we found it unfavorable. And then one last item before I get out of here. We have about $20,000 left in the budget. And I've been working with our treasurer as well as Kiki Diapolito to figure out a way we can get rid of this money in the next week. So we're going to motion to add a bill which will essentially change the timeline of the funding to essentially say that, like right now, you cannot request funding 15 university days, like 15 university days prior to the last Senate session. We're going to change that to 5 to open up funding for the next week. Next Wednesday, it is 5 university days prior to the last Senate session. So essentially, if this passes tonight, organizations will have until next Wednesday to request the remaining about $20,000, give or take. And yeah, with all that, I yield to questions.
The chairman yields his time to questions. Are there any questions for the chairman? Seeing none, thank you. We will now hear a report from the Health and Safety Committee. Chairwoman Cumby, you are recognized.
Hey y'all, hope y'all had a good week. We were pretty busy last Friday. We went ahead and conducted the 3 interviews for the following positions: Secretary of Health and Wellbeing, and that nominee is Aretha Murphy. I think she's out there in the crowd. Well, all of y'all are. Anyways, but Secretary of Safety and Transportation, which is nominee Sydney Musgrave, and then also Secretary of Campus Wellness, which is nominee Mina Sawani. And then we just finished our interview with Student Life, and that was the Secretary of Disability Services, and that nominee is Sophia Sambrowski. All of them were found unanimously favorable, which was really exciting. They all really killed it. If y'all have any questions, feel free to ask me, but yeah, they were really qualified, really good. And yeah, and then we also elected our vice chair, which is Lexi Baldinger, wherever she is. But yeah, so super excited to work with her. And then finally, we voted on SBL 11709. That was found unanimously favorable. And yeah, I yield to questions.
The chairwoman yields her time to questions. Are there any questions for the chairwoman? Seeing none, thank you. We will now hear a report from the Judiciary Committee. Chairwoman Diapolito, you are recognized.
Hey guys, so Judiciary actually did also meet twice. We met on Tuesday, 6 o'clock for an interview, 6:30 for an interview, and then continued our meeting after that. And then we also met earlier today, both in person and virtually, for an interview at 1 o'clock. So we've had 4 out of 5 of our interviews so far. We found Tia Perez favorable for the position of Director of Local Advocacy Bureau, favorable with a vote of 3-1 and 1 abstention. We did this because she has a strong established relationship with the mayor. She's very knowledgeable about the position and its duties. She has already accomplished a lot of great things within the committee last year, including an Instacart initiative. She has a feasible yet strong set plans for this upcoming term, and she's very well spoken and educated on the matters that were discussed. We found Eva Burba favorable for the position of Director of State Advocacy by a vote of 6 to 2 abstentions. Because she was experienced in being involved with student government and other organizations on campus. She had a strong understanding of the position. She worked with the Department of Social Services and advocacy efforts already. She has many existing connections, and she seemed very passionate about helping the student body. We found Olivia Smeltzer unfavorable for the position of Director of Federal Advocacy by a vote of 6 to 1 abstention because she did not give comprehensive answers to the questions she was asked. She did not seem to have any initiatives planned out thoroughly. There wasn't many ideas offered to us on how she was going to reach out to students other than surveys, and she didn't fully seem to understand the role and the duties while being repetitive in her answers. We found Ellie Tanner favorable for the position of Attorney General by a vote of 6 to 1 abstention because her experience in Senate and on Senate staff has made her very experienced with the codes. She is determined to focus on facts of a case rather than prior personal relationships. She has participated in many mock trials for other organizations, and she plans to stay very engaged with Senate while she also has a very strong action plan. We also have reviewed some legislation. We found SBL 11706 unanimously unfavorable with an amendment proposal. This will be added on during the motion period. We believe and agree that this amendment has truly made this a strong piece. The reason it was added was because we didn't want to give the Chief Justice and the Speaker the ability to update the codes at the same time, because that can lead to like, oh, well, you didn't do it, but you didn't do it. So after the Chief Justice's allotted amount of time, the responsibility will then go to the Speaker, who has 10 more university days after that. And the Chief Justice will give a memo to the Speaker on why it wasn't finished, which will then be read to Senate. We found SBL 11709 unanimously favorable. SBL 11710, we found this favorable with a vote of 5 to 2 abstentions. As Jack said, there's an amendment coming from the Finance Committee that we discussed and fixes the issues that they saw. Other than that, we discussed our goals within the committee and ways to work towards them. We'll be reaching out to Student Life Committee soon to see if we can plan some type of state advocacy day with state representatives for next year, rather than Carolina Day when we go there, maybe somehow get them here. We also plan to dive in on working to clarify and shorten the codes to the best of our ability when we come back from summer break. We're obviously going to try to get a head start on this, but definitely a long-term goal. And we are also working on enhancing the motion sheet for all of Senate. And then, as Jack discussed, we'll be proposing a bill today about the time limit of allocation requests. We'll go into more detail when that is there. And then, yeah, we have some very exciting things coming from our members shortly. They're really blowing me away with everything that they're doing and all their ideas, so I wanted to give a thank you to them. But I yield my time to questions.
The chairwoman yields her time to questions. Are there any questions? Seeing none, thank you. We will now hear a report from the Liberties and Representation Committee. Chairwoman Hopkins, you are recognized. I would also remind everybody, just keep the side talking to a minimum. I can hear all of it. The acoustics in this room are really weird, so.
Happy Wednesday, everyone. Liberties and Representations met last Thursday at 6 p.m. and our meeting will also be at 6 p.m. tomorrow because it's Thursday. So our meeting times, put it on your calendars. We talked about a lot of initiatives we want to start doing, including at the beginning of the next semester after summer, we want to look into doing an International Students Welcome Bash, which I think would be a lot of fun and aligns with the goals of our committee. And then today, just before Senate, we conducted an interview for the position of Secretary of Liberties and Representations. That was with Anaya Gibson, and she was found unanimously favorable with a vote from 5 to 0, obviously. And we thought she was very overly qualified. She had a very achievable action plan, and we look forward to working with her. So yeah, I yield the remainder of my time to questions.
The chairwoman yields her time to questions. Are there any questions for the chairwoman? Seeing none, thank you. We will now hear a report from the Powers and Responsibilities Committee. Are there any representatives willing to speak? Vice Chairman Dorsey, you are recognized.
Hello, everybody. So, Powers and Responsibilities completed 7 interviews during this past week. we found Tia Perez favorable to the position of Director of Local Advocacy Bureau. Eva Burba, favorable to the position of Director of State Advocacy. Ellie Tanner, favorable to the position of Attorney General. Tristan Bonamode, favorable to the position of the Elections Commissioner. Madison Hahn, favorable to the position of the Deputy Elections Commissioner. Liam Chandler to the position of the Deputy Elections Commissioner. And then we had one unfavorable. We found Olivia Smeltzer unfavorable to the Director of Federal Advocacy by a vote of 2 favorable to 9 unfavorables. The reasoning behind that is the committee would have liked to see more in-depth responses, initiatives, and more thought concerning the role, a more specified action plan with details, and we would also like to see more elaboration, either verbal or written, in terms of specific ideas and goals. And then lastly, we would have liked to see more acknowledgement of the differences from the city level to the federal level in terms of advocacy. We had one interview be rescheduled, and that would be London Patel to the position of Secretary of Government Relations, and we will conduct that interview on April 15th. Regarding legislation, we found Bill SBL 11705 favorable to a vote of 7 to 2. We found SBL 11707 favorable, and then SBL 11709 also favorable. Powers will meet hopefully at 6 p.m. on Tuesdays regarding any changes in our schedule. So I yield my time to questions.
The Vice Chairman yields his time to questions. Are there any questions for the Vice Chairman? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
We will now hear a report from the Student Life Committee. Chairman Spurgeon, you are recognized.
Hi, everyone. This week we met on Monday to discuss legislation and further initiatives. And our main priority this week was meeting today from 1:30 until right before Senate on interviews. We found Jordan Cooper unanimously favorable to the Secretary of Student Services, Ella Conister favorable to Secretary of Greek Relations, Sam Feldman favorable to Secretary of Athletics, and Peyton Tumblin favorable to Secretary of Community Relations. And we found Shivani Patel unfavorable to Secretary of Veterans Affairs. I yield the question.
The Chairman yields his time to questions. Are there any questions for the Chairman? Seeing none, thank you. We will now hear a report from the Sustainability Committee. Chairwoman Gopal, you are recognized.
Hi, everyone. Happy Wednesday. So Sustainability met on Monday, which we interviewed the Secretary of Sustainability, Moretta Rope, and found her favorable from votes from 4 to 0. She was very good and an amazing action plan, so super excited to see what she does and work with her. We also reviewed SBL 11709, found that favorable from 4 to 0 votes as well. I met with the head of sustainability from the RHA, and they actually have their own Senate, which I thought was really cool. So I will be attending their Senate. It's Monday at 7:30, which is right after our meeting time. So we're going to be planning to partner with them and push initiatives with them, probably starting after the summer, because I think they're kind of dying down with some of their initiatives. I have a meeting with Sustainable Carolina this Thursday, a meeting with Larry Cook April 29th. And then we decided not to push for legislation this semester just because it's kind of hard to go through with sustainability initiatives with only 2 weeks left. But once we come back from summer break, we will definitely push for that. And with that, I yield my time to questions.
The Chairwoman yields her time to questions. Are there any questions? Seeing none, thank you. We will now hear a report from the Freshman Council. Are there any representatives from the Freshman Council present? Seeing none. We will now hear a report from the Constitutional Council. Chief Justice Buchmeyer, you are recognized.
Good evening, everyone. It's nice to be back with y'all. Actually do have a couple of announcements today. One, we got the codes and Constitution updated. I know some people will be very excited about that. I would say, having updated all that, I would encourage everyone, there's kind of a standard notation used in most, government where you have explicit strike-throughs and then strike-throughs for what's getting crossed out and then underlines for additions. I would just make sure for y'all going forward to make sure for a clarity perspective of what you want changed, to make sure you review the exact sections. And then rather than, there's a lot, I think that there's been a growing trend of just saying the following section should read as, taking the time to go through and actually striking all that through and then adding the underline for what needs to get added. I think that might help a little bit with clarity and direction where that's going. Additionally, I emailed President Tax earlier today. I'm resigning after this report, so that's the second piece of news. And with that, I'll yield to questions. If anyone's got any questions on codes or anything else before I...
The Chief Justice yields his time to questions. Are there any questions? Seeing none, thank you for all your years in the role. We will now hear a report from the Speaker of the Senate, Maura Hamilton. Speaker of the Senate, Maura Hamilton, you are recognized. Hi, guys. Great job this week doing all the interviews. I was super impressed with the amount of commitment that you guys put in. I got to sit in on some of the Judiciary and Powers ones yesterday, and I got to sit in on a Judiciary meeting, and I was very, very impressed with all the great work that you guys are doing. Thank you for sending your memos in on time. Just a few quick updates. Chairwoman Gopal actually just kind of alluded to this in her report, but just a reminder that we do only have 2 Senate sessions left after this. Then we go into the summer. There is something that you do in the summer called the Summer Advisory Committee. You'll probably hear more about that next week from our wonderful Speaker Pro Tempore. Great job with all the legislation. We're going to be over 10 pieces by the end of this semester, which is awesome. That's way ahead of schedule of what we were doing last year, and I'm super impressed with it. Just a friendly reminder, I've talked about this in the group me before, but I want to say it to you guys, like, to your face, that at the end of the day, like, this is the student senate, so we are all students first, so please make sure that we're maintaining realistic expectations when it comes to text messages getting sent during the school day, text messages getting sent really late at night. You just want to make sure that you're giving some time to allow people to give you a good, thoughtful response. At the same time, there was a lot of communication this week and a lot of different interviews, and I understand that that can be overwhelming. But as I mentioned during Senate training, to me, it's paramount that you provide some sort of communication when it comes to absences. I spoke with all the chairpersons, and up until today, it is my understanding that every senator that has received an unexcused absence, it was because you did not show up to a committee meeting and you did not communicate. If you sent even just a text message, you were excused. As far as I'm aware, obviously I could be missing something, but that was what I received last night. So that just goes to show that our chairpersons are in y'all's best interest and they don't want to mark you unexcused, but at the same time, they put a lot of time and effort into scheduling interviews and committee meetings. And if you're not going to be able to make it, it really goes a long way just to shoot them a text message and say, hey, I have class, hey, I have work. I know that it's outside of the regularly scheduled committee times, and I'm sure that it would be okay. So just make sure that you're checking the group meetings, you're checking your emails, you're communicating with your chairpersons, because that can be a little bit disheartening for them. If I talk to you about the pharmacy delivery service thing, I know that the form is like closed down now. I emailed them, so hopefully they should be getting back to me, and that should be reopened so you can sign back up. And then nothing else from me. As soon as I'm expecting a lot of pieces of legislation to pass tonight. So we did sign our first piece last week. It was just a finance allocation bill. We started using an online signature system, so that's really fun. It tracks when I signed it down to like the second. And please ignore the fact that I signed it at like 1 a.m. on a Tuesday, but I did sign it. But as soon as we pass legislation tonight, all of that should be sent out in the following weeks to the proper administration so that you guys can begin advocating for the changes that you want to see around campus. With that, I yield my time to questions. Are there any questions? Awesome, seeing none. We are now in line for a report from the student body treasurer. Treasurer Ashley Reynolds, you are now recognized.
So we do have a little bit of a long one today, so I apologize in advance. But starting us off, just the usual reimbursement stuff. Last week we had 71 pending, 58 approved. This is the first week that we have swapped the numbers. So we are no longer have the majority pending, we have the majority approved with 69 to 67. And I know that doesn't sound like a big kind of difference, but it's very much encouraging to the finance team that they're finally kind of out of the rut that they put themselves in. But further, this is a partial funding mechanism that we will be using going forward. It is called the Student Organization Engagement Point System. It's currently being used by the sports clubs, so we've been benchmarking them to understand kind of how this is going to work for us.
So what is the intent behind this? So what, when we think about it, was the original intent of giving student government money to allocate? It was a fully funded event, and that we're used to, but that was not the intent, and that's not how the university foresees us using that money. They foresee us using it as assistance. And I just kind of put the quote in there, which is specifically what our money is supposed to be. It's supposed to be assistance. Here's some data for you guys that we got. So I excluded this year because we had just an enormous amount of money, and so it was kind of different than all the years that we've seen past. But if you look at, we'll go 2022 to 2023 first. Only 56 orgs requested funding. We have 659, on this campus, 350 of them-ish are undergrad. So only 56 requested money. Only 37 of them received over $1,000, and then 11 of them received over $5,000. Moving on to the next year, only 58 requested money, 31 received over $1,000, and 15 received over $5,000, 11 of them being the exact same organizations. So both of these years we ran out of money swiftly, and then, like I said, we have over 350 organizations at this university that we can fund, and it looks like we're only funding about 50 or 60. Just some things to consider going forward. How does funding and finance work in the real world? Do you walk up to a bank and you're like, I'm throwing this event and I want you to fund the whole thing, or I filled out my forms the right way, now you're required to give me all the money that I asked for? Not necessarily. And why does student government consistently allocate almost 50% of our budget to the same 15 organizations every year? We're meant to fund everybody and assist in everybody in the ways that we can. And then, are the events that we're funding beneficial to the entire university and Carolina community as a whole? So, what is the purpose of this? The purpose is to encourage engagement on campus and in the community to receive funding. So, it is to encourage active participation, accountability, collaboration. It rewards involvement. It rewards community service, organizational development by allocating points, which I'll get into, that correspond to the amount of money that you're eligible for from student government. So it'll be operating in a tier system, and so you can see we have garnet, black, gold, silver, and bronze. So these are the amount of points. Actually, the top one's wrong. It'll be 70 and above. I just didn't change it. Points that you've received to the amount of money that you will be allocated. So let's say you request $1,000. You're on silver tier. The max that you can receive from student government is 20% of $1,000. Continuing. Ways you can earn points. This is what we have right now. We're open to more suggestions. If you're thinking to yourself, hey, I know something that the organization throws every year and we can never get attendance, great incentive for organizations. Attendance at Treasurer's Workshop and attendance at mandatory trainings put on by the LSC starting next year automatically gets you into the eligible for funding category. Attendance at additional Treasurer's Workshops or additional trainings, submitting your reimbursements on time, since we've had kind of an issue with students not responding swiftly. Updating your organization on Garnet Gate, going to service Saturdays, attending Student Senate to know what's going on in your university, and then meeting with a member of my staff are kind of what we have right now. We're open to suggestions moving forward. If you want to go to the next one more. Yeah. And then this is just a disclaimer we put on the end. Just because you are only eligible from 20% from us does not mean 20% is all that you can get. Just like in the real world, there's not only one bank, right? There's not only one funding source. There are grants, scholarships, now SOFAB, us, the university, departments within the university, schools within the university. There are lots of places students can go for funding and organizations can go for funding. So this is not us saying this is the one-all, be-all. You are literally only eligible for 20% of what you request. There are many places that people can go to receive funding. So we are not taking organizations out of the running. They will still be able to have the events they want to have. It just might not all come out of our budget. And so, like, this is just an example I threw in there. It's not updated. I updated it right before I got in here. But let's say you're on the black tier. Black is 50%. So if you're receiving 50% from us, you will be receiving the same 50% from SOFAB because we're using the same point system for both. That right there is 100%. If you only had 20% from us, 20% from them, that's 40%. You can ask for a grant. You can go to your school. You can fundraise. I think fundraising is something that we've gotten kind of lost in. But there are lots of ways that you can still receive full funding. So I absolutely do not want you guys to walk away and think that this is us saying that you won't be able to have your events because you can't afford them. There are many, many places you can go at this university to receive funding. We have just gotten into kind of a rut of being the place that some people go for all of it. And we also just haven't had a stable system within Finance Committee to partially fund events. It's in the codes that it's up to the discretion of Finance Committee for a lot of things, but we've kind of gotten to the point where if it doesn't break the codes, you get all the money that you asked for. And in some situations, that's just not needed. It's not, you don't need $7,000 for the food, things like that. So I think this is the way that the university and I see as a benchmark for partial funding. I'm very excited about it. I just learned about it last week, and so I am open to all suggestions regarding points, regarding tiers, regarding things you can go to. I was also thinking about putting out a guide for other places that you can go. If we give you 20%, here is a full list of the other things that you can go to also receive funding. So keep that in mind. This is really a base introduction to what this process is going to be like. Since we did just start developing it last week, so please also keep that in mind. And we're rolling out this change the same time we roll out SOFAB, or the school rolls out SOFAB next semester, as well as new requirements for orgs to stay orgs, which is these mandatory trainings that they will have to go to at the LSC. So with that, I yield my time to questions.
The student body treasurer yields her time to questions. Are there any questions? Reminder, we're using the microphones now. Y'all don't stay in your seats. So like you guys can like literally get up and like get in line, like it's a town
Make
hall.
a line.
Also, I'm gonna motion to you two in a second. I also just want to clarify, like as Ashley just said, this is like a new idea that we're developing. So I would ask, like, if you have broad questions about the content, now is a great time. If you have questions about specifics or numbers or suggestions, I would recommend not to throw Ashley under the bus, but I would recommend sending Ashley an email and then you can meet with her one-on-one and have like a good in-depth conversation. Senator Gay, are you point of personal privileging? There's been a motion to appoint Senator Jacobson as Senator Gay's proxy. Is there a second? Without objection, so ordered. Senator Gay. Granted. All right, we'll start with Senator George.
Hi, this might be a stupid question, but it says that it's up to the discretion of the club to decide where the money goes to. Will they still have to like detail where it's going to in the budget request?
Yeah, so in the budget request, let's say they have their invoice from Aramark, and let's say we offer them 50% of funding. It's up to them where they allocate those funds within the budget request, and still the same way reimbursement currently works, you can only get reimbursed for something that you receive funding, like allocation for. So if they decide that they want their 40% to go to the food or the ballroom that they rented, that's up to their discretion, and they would submit that part of the reimbursement.
Okay, got it.
Senator Sanders. There's been a motion to appoint Senator Gopel as Senator Sanders' proxy. Is there a second? Without objection, so ordered. Senator Sanders. Granted. Senator Silkert.
Being exec for a club sports team, we've dealt with this in the past, and it's definitely, I know that you said that you kind of marked it after the club sports one, but there's definitely been some, I guess you could say, like, people trying to make recommendations to how the club sports one could be better. So have you talked to club sports, or have you made any suggestions maybe of your own that would make it better than the club sports version?
So the reason that we're differing from Club Sports receives about $800,000 in requests every single year. We don't receive nearly that amount of money, which is also why their point system and percentages differs from ours. And why they also require people to do like philanthropy events for points. One, right now we haven't nailed down a way to track those kinds of things. With sports clubs it's a little bit easier. And then we also don't receive nearly $800,000 in requests. So that's why we're a little bit different, but we're always open to suggestions.
Thank you.
Senator Lapsley.
Yes, thank you, Speaker. Real fast, just so I can clarify. The numbers that we're using is based on the years of 2022 to 2023.
Yes.
And this rolls out in the fall.
Correct.
Okay. So you can let me know or not. Are we trying to get more to a like a crypto type deal, like a credit system, or like what are we kind of doing
Not necessarily a credit system.
using like real world method?
More, I think we're just trying to teach students and organizations that there are other ways and avenues to receive funding. And we've also just been really looking for a solid way to allocate partial funding, since it has been kind of up in the air and hard, and it's up to discretion, and then we include bias, and it's become kind of a hard thing. I feel like this is on paper. There is no bias. What you're eligible for is what you're eligible for, and so I think that's where it's coming from.
Follow up.
Mhm.
So will this system be integrated into the Chapter 3 code some kind of way?
This will not be codified. So
So
this
this
is
won't
coming
be
from, this will not be codified, no.
Okay. Okay. Hey, you.
Senator Wisenet.
Have you talked to student leadership about this in the orgs? Like, how is this not an overall downgrade to the current system we already have?
I would agree that our current system not disincentivizes, but it's hard. And I have talked to a lot of students that I know that are leadership of their own orgs, and they do continue to say, but this is just harder, this just disincentivizes us more. I think as a team, as a Senate, as student government, we could have the discussion of how do we make student government funding, like how do we incentivize people to come to student government? Because like we saw, there's not nearly the amount of clubs that we have that are coming. So how do we, is the reason I created the director of outreach position. Like, how do we go out and tell people that this is here for them, even though it might not be 100% anymore, like this is here for you, we wanna help you, we wanna help fund your events, and going out and educating people on how they can come receive our funding. That way it's more open to everybody, and I think people will still come.
Do you have a follow-up question?
Follow up.
Mhm.
So we have a long line of student orgs waiting on reimbursement. So why are we moving the goalpost once again for student orgs that want to fund their events?
Well, this doesn't have anything to do with reimbursements,
How so?
because this is something that we're implementing on the front end, and then once it passes us, they can decide where that goes, and it'll go to reimbursement the same way it does right now.
Follow up.
Mhm.
So if I'm a student org and I want to have an event in the fall,
Mhm.
I can only get 20% of what I ask for?
Correct. And then maybe that way we'll actually have money for you in the spring when you come to us wanting to fund an event in the spring, where in these 2 years we ran out of money in December.
Doesn't this just encourage students not to have events within the fall semester?
I don't think so. I think student organizations want to have events and want to get involved. I think that every student organization, once they come to a mandatory treasurers workshop and mandatory training, will already be eligible for funding, and everybody knows by basic math that 20% is better than 0. So they will still come. If they need money, they will still come to get money. And I think that we will still continue to see lots of organizations on campus hosting events, and I think it'll still be moving the same way as usual.
I'm gonna switch with Senator Lapsley. If you have a follow-up question, we'll.
Point of information, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but those numbers were due to student orgs not attending the treasurer's workshop, which by them not attending it, they were automatically cut out from receiving funds.
Correct.
Okay.
And it's in our codes that you must come to a treasurer's workshop before you can be eligible for funding.
Yeah, that's why those numbers were low. I agree.
Right.
My next question is, how will Finance Committee go about mitigating the tier list? Like, will they have access to see those invoices? Will they have that access on the tier number list?
Like
How
access
will
to
they-
see who's on what tier?
Yeah, how does, or to your knowledge, and if you don't have the answer, that's fine, but how will the Finance Committee go about selecting based off of that if this isn't gonna be codified?
I think that Finance Committee could go about acting the exact same way it does now. It shouldn't affect Finance Committee decisions, what tier you're on. I think they could say, this all qualifies for funding, and then we go to them and be like, we approved you for everything, but you are only eligible for 20%, and we'll keep that in mind when they submit for reimbursements as well.
Senator Iftikhar.
I just wanted to ask, because there are different tiers, so for the Gardner tier, which I believe is 70% or greater than 70%, if a student organization is part of Gardner tier, would that mean that 70% of the funding would come from student government and 30% for SOFAB, or would it be redistributed to 50-50 each?
That's something we're still working through with administration right now about kind of do we 50-50 split if it's 100 from the two of us. I think where it gets a little bit tricky is if you get 40 from us and 40 from SOFAB and 20 from a grant or your school. We'll just have to work through that because we're still kind of working through what it means like to be getting from us and to get from SOFAB and to get from schools. So I think we're still, if you have any suggestions, that'd be great.
And as a follow-up question, let's assume that a student organization is on, again, let's say if it's in the Gardner TA, and if it receives 70% of its funding from student organization and 30% from SOFAB, would SOFAB then transfer the remaining 40% funds to student government to sort of balance the sheets at the end of the day, if that makes sense?
No, because at the end of the day, they would only be eligible for 100%. So it would just not get allocated. Like that, if it was like 70% from us, and then you're saying they got 30% from them,
SOFAB, yes.
I think it would be up to the student orgs I mean, they're still getting 100% funding. So on the back end, it'll be whatever we decide the split is, if it's 50-50 or 70-30 or whatever it is.
I'm assuming if it's 70-30, would SOFAB then refinance student government in that sense? Because we wouldn't
No.
want anyone's coffers to sort of bleed out earlier than they're supposed to.
Our finances and SOFAB finances are completely separate. So there is no book to balance between the two of us. They're operating on a completely different system than we are.
That makes sense. All right.
Also, to clarify, like, it kind of operates this way in Finance Committee right now, but currently Matt Hines sits in on the Finance Committee meetings. I mean, congrats. Now you guys know Emma will be in those meetings next year. We're hiring a new student government position within the Leadership and Service Center. So, like, none of these conversations would ever be led by students completely. Like, there would be a full-time staff member who this is their job to be able to answer those questions. Senator Von Cannon. Granted. Let's do Senator Wisenet again.
How will these points be displayed to student orgs? Will this be an app, a website, GarnetGate, the new system that Matt is working on?
So my going theory right now is just like our external budget is public and on the student government website, we would kind of make the points tier list public and on the student government website, just so that you can always monitor where you are, and not that you would need to know where anyone else is, but I guess you could look, and just kind of monitor where you are. And then this list, or the list of how you earn points, would also be public knowledge as well.
Do you have a follow-up question? Okay.
Yeah, follow up. So for the point system, will a percentage of these points be carried over to the next year so that students can have events in the fall, or everybody starts off at 0 points every year?
You start at 0 every year.
Senator Aloka.
Kind of a follow-up to that last question, but how far apart are these events? Like, can organization accumulate a certain amount of points per month so that, like, how long will it take someone to reach, like, the Garnet tier?
So every org will be required to attend, I don't remember the amount of mandatory trainings from the LSC within your year, and then treasurer's workshops will probably be bi-weekly, at least for the fall semester.
So, like, it won't take a long time to accumulate points?
No, as long as they're diligent, it won't take a long time to accumulate points.
I just put the point slideshow up because I can sense that that's a topic people are asking. I mean, I could be wrong when I say this, but to me, if you look at this, it looks like in the span of 2 weeks, if you went to a treasurer's workshop, sent Senate people to Senate meetings, there was a service Saturday, you met with somebody on Ashley's staff, you submitted a reimbursement on time, and you updated your Garnet Gate. I mean, I can't do that math in my head because I'm not looking at the numbers, but that's more than 20 points for sure. Senator George.
Hi, so for clarification, like the low number of clubs that are getting funding that you showed on the slide, is that because not that many clubs are requesting funding, or just we're running out of funding, we can't actually like give them any money?
Yeah, so on that slide, the 56 and the 58 they just requested funding. Like, nobody else requested funding that year. Like, it was only those 58 that requested funding at all. Does that answer your question?
Yes. Okay, thanks.
Senator Spurgeon.
So if it's really easy to earn all these points at the beginning of the year, we're still going to run out of money if everyone hits 80% in like September?
There's always the possibility, but at the same time, you're always never guaranteed funds. from Senate Finance. They have discretion over that. I don't think so. I think it is easy to earn points, and the reason that we're doing that this first year is because since this will be kind of a pilot, there were lots of other ideas thrown in the hat of maybe larger points for like a larger spread to get to the upper tiers, but I think for the first year, we kind of want to see how it works, if it works, what we can do to change it as more of a pilot than like a this is the way it's going to be forever. And so I think we can also reevaluate that come winter break or come next year. We could reevaluate the tiers, the amount of points on each tier, what you can do to earn points, things like that. I think it's kind of all up in the air at the moment.
Senator Wisenet.
Can we go back to the tier slide? Okay, so here's the tiers. Do you have a timeline? Let's say we have a perfect org. They do everything to get every optional possible point. What's the timeline that they'll reach Garnet? Will they reach it before spring break?
Well, so like I said, it's like 70 points for the top tier. I forgot to switch it when I sent her my updated deck earlier. Well, if we go back to the points slide.
I feel like Vanna White.
You come to your treasurer's workshop as the first week of class next semester during syllabus week, and you bring 5 of your officers. There's 20 points right there. You have to go to 3 trainings. Let's say you go to all 3 of them. That's, 45 points on additional to your 20. So you're already at 65 points, and you haven't updated anything in Garnet Gate. You haven't been to a Senate. You haven't been to Service Saturday. You haven't met with my staff. So I think you could get there quickly within the first 3 months of class. And the reason we're doing it like that, again, is because this will be acting as a pilot program. So we want to see kind of what it's going to look like in practice.
Senator Jacobson.
Hi. Could we go back one slide, please?
Back or like forward?
Just back one.
This one?
Yeah, that slide. So the 70%'s there, or the 50, 40, 20, that's from of how much money they've requested or how much money they were approved of?
How much money they were approved of.
Approved of.
Yeah,
Okay.
sorry, I had to think about that for a second. Because if you request $10,000, but you know half of it won't get approved, and you just want 50% of what you requested, that could easily be a way to cheat the system, and we wouldn't want that.
But most of the stuff, SOFAB stuff will get funded, basically, most of the time. And the finance committee things are a lot harder to get funded. So is there a system where it's balancing out? You get some from finance committee, and then the rest is the SOFAB plus all the rest of the stuff, because you're not 100% sure what's going to get funded in finance committee. It's all the balancing between those. Is that all worked out, or is that going to be just figured out on?
I think starting out, there will be a weekly or bi-weekly meeting between staff of student government and the staff related to SOFAB, so that they can communicate, especially at the beginning, regarding, did you request from us? Did you request from SOFAB? How much did you request? What percentages are we looking at? Especially at the beginning, to just kind of clarify and work through the kinks as they come.
That also, following back on my point of information, Senator Jacobson, that will be like a pro staff, like the people that actually work in the finance offices or in the Department of Student Life. Senator Oloco. Granted. Are there any other questions for the student body treasurer? Seeing none, thank you, Ashley. We'll now move to report from the student body vice president, Vice President Jordan Richardson. Oh, I couldn't see you. You're recognized.
Hi, everyone. I do not have a long presentation today. So pretty quickly, me and Emma recorded our first episode of Inside of 1801 today in the 3rd floor. So hopefully that should be out in the next week or so, which is really exciting. Safety walk, unfortunately, probably won't be happening this semester just because of our time constraints. The USCPD cannot do it the time that I wanted to, and I can't do the time when they wanted to, so we're probably just going to push it back till next semester. And please make sure y'all all in the Garnet Gate. I'm still in the process of getting everybody in, so if you're not in the Garnet Gate, please reach out to me. And also make sure you're in the SG GroupMe. Yeah, I yield to questions.
The student body vice president yields his time to questions. Are there any questions? Seeing none, thank you. If you aren't in the Garnet Gate, check your school email, because I sent everyone in here an invitation to join. We will now hear a report from the student body president. President Courtney Tax, you are recognized.
Hey everyone, so I first off wanted to thank you guys all for holding all of the cabinet nomination interviews. I know it's a lot, I'm sorry, but I appreciate y'all. He already left because he did resign after his report, but I just wanted to thank Chief Justice Buchmeyer for his service in Constitutional Council. Good luck at Harvard Law, we're rooting for you. Additionally, today I met with the VP of Research to go over grants because I know that's kind of been something contentious that's been going on at the university. So I did just kind of want to ease everybody's minds. Had a very great conversation with them. They were saying that at the University of South Carolina, we have 1,220 grants that are provided. These are research opportunities. Of those 1,220, only 28 of them have been terminated. Typically, we get around $309 million, and we're on track to get that again this year. And then I also had kind of heard whispers that there were kind of rumors that colleges were having to pull from emergency funds to pay for grants. That is not happening. So I just wanted to get everyone's questions answered. And also Fulbrights. I know that there's been a lot of talk about Fulbrights. If students are doing okay, are they leaving, are they not? But they're still here. So so Fulbright students have not been affected thus far. Additionally, on Friday, I'm meeting with administration and finance to start brainstorming how to increase the student activity fee over the next year. The last time it was increased was 2015, so it's been 10 years. So I'm actually really wanting to work with Senate to kind of brainstorm with you guys. Some things that I'm pulling are the number of orgs that have requested money, the difference between 2015 and 2025, the difference in prices of events from 2015 and 2025, and also salary changes, because part of the student activity fee does fund salaries. Additionally, I'm meeting with the provost tomorrow. We're going to talk about ensuring that professors abide by the new attendance policy that was implemented, which does include mental wellness days. And we're also I'm going to push for more transparency with academic fees. That's something that Student Senate has been really, really pushing for over the last 3 years. So I'm going to start the conversation, and if anybody has any input of things you would like me to bring up, please let me know. I know there was a piece of legislation that was written this past week, so I wanted to make sure that that is being advocated for. On a more fun note, when I was in Tampa, we went to James Raymond Stadium, and one of the really cool things there is they actually had sunscreen dispensers. I feel like there are two main issues when you go to a football game. One, students aren't hydrated. Two, students are getting burnt. We fixed the hydration part, but I'm working with Michelle Dodenhoff to actually find sponsors to implement that into Williams-Brice and Founders Park. So if you are prone to getting burnt, sunscreen dispensers. Additionally, I'm meeting with USCPD on Monday, and we will be discussing traffic safety and nightlife safety. And just a reminder that we will be having SG-wide on Tuesday from 6 to 8. It'll probably be more like 6 to 7:15. And that's either going to be on the Horseshoe. If it's on the Horseshoe, it's bring your own blanket, and we're going to have a fun little get-together. And then if not, it's going to be on Davis Circle. But that's just a fun time to meet everybody, do a little bit of cross-branch collaboration before we leave. And with that, I yield my time to questions.
The student body president yields her time to questions. Are there any questions? Microphone. Also, to clarify two things, first off, SG-wide is codified to be mandatory for senators. It will be the same absence policy. We'll go over that later. Second off, for my new senators, the student activity fee is what pays for everything student life. So everything from student life employees' salaries to the student government fund, that is all the student activity fee, and you pay that semesterly. Senator Wisenant.
How many students have reached out to you expressing that they want college to be more expensive than it already is?
Not a lot, but students have also complained about Russell House. Students have complained, I've heard a lot of you guys complain that we don't have enough funding for student organizations, that we run out too quickly. That's funded by the student activity fee. You hear from student affairs employees that they would like a livable salary. That's out of the student activity fee. So even if it's not, you want college to be more expensive, and I want to also emphasize that this is not, students pay $87 a semester. This would be an increase between $50 to $75, so it's not an extreme increase. If you look at your tuition, you'll find that the third-party vendors, specifically for housing and meal plans, those go up a few $100s every single semester. This is specifically for student experience, student organizations, staff. Russell House, $2 out of the student activity fee goes to Campus Rec, of all places, even though that they have their own fee. So this increase is not going to be a lot, but it's going to have a massive impact.
Microphone.
Next Tuesday from 6 to 7:15.
So that's SG-wide.
Yes, SG-wide.
Any other questions? Awesome, seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
We are now in line for special orders of the Senate. Are there any letters, petitions, appointments, applications, or other the clerk will now read?
A communication from the Office of the Student Body President regarding the nomination of cabinet positions. Secretary of Religious Affairs, Maxwell Eisenel.
The nominee is referred to the Student Life Committee. Continuing on with the special orders of the Senate, are there any letters, petitions, appointments, applications, or other the clerk will now read?
A communication from the Office of the Student Body President regarding the nomination of Government Relations Member, Director of Federal Advocacy, Olivia Smeltzer.
The nominees or the nominee is referred to both the Judiciary and the Powers and Responsibilities Committee. Continuing on with the special orders of the Senate, are there any letters, petitions, appointments, applications, or other the clerk will now read?
A communication from the Office of the Student Body President regarding the nomination and creation of discretionary cabinet positions, Secretary of Alumni Affairs, Harper Rice, Secretary of IT and Infrastructure, Pearson Dillon, Secretary of Transfer Student Affairs, Bradley Gittens.
The nominees are referred to the following committees: Secretary of Alumni Affairs, Student Life Committee; Secretary of IT and Infrastructure, Student Life Committee; Secretary of Transfer Student Affairs, Academics Committee. Continuing on with the special orders of the Senate, are there any letters, petitions, appointments, applications, or other the clerk will now read?
A communication from the Office of the Student Body Vice President regarding the appointment and creation of staff positions, Chief Advisor, Involvement Coordinator, Internal Outreach Coordinator.
Received. Continuing on with the special orders of the Senate, are there any letters, petitions, appointments, applications, or other the clerk will now read?
A communication from the Office of the Student Body Vice President regarding the appointment of team members, outreach team members, communications team members, programming team members.
Received. Continuing on with the special orders of the Senate, are there any letters, petitions, appointments, applications, or other the clerk will now read?
Application of Bryce Callahan, John Schmidt, Chris Woodard to be seated in the 117th Student Senate.
The applicants are referred to the Powers and Responsibilities Committee. Continuing on with the special orders of the Senate, are there any letters, petitions, appointments, applications, or other the clerk will now read?
A communication from the Constitutional Council regarding the resignation of Joseph Buckmayer from the position of Chief Justice of the Constitutional Council.
Received. Continuing on with the special orders of the Senate, are there any letters, petitions, appointments, applications, or other the clerk will now read? Seeing no more special orders of the Senate, we are now in the motion period. Are there any motions on the floor at this time? I am going to ask, in the interest of time, if you are confirming a nominee, so a chairperson or somebody doing it on a chairperson's behalf, please let's do those motions first, because then we'll suspend the rules and allow them to take their oaths of office, and then we will continue with the normal motions of Senate. Chairman Matthews. The question is of the approval of the nominees to the position of Comptroller and Block. Is there a second? All those in favor say aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. The nominees are approved. If y'all can watch side talking, just because I need to actually hear for this. Vice Chairman Dorsey. All right. The question is of the confirmation of the nominees to the position, their respective positions and block. Is there a second? All those in favor say aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. The nominees are confirmed. Senator Gopal. All right, there's been a motion to confirm Marietta Rope to the position of Secretary of Sustainability. Is there a second? All those in favor say aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. The nominee is confirmed. Chairwoman Cumby. The question is of the confirmation of the nominees to their respective positions and block. Is there a second? All those in favor say aye. All opposed? The ayes have it, the nominees are confirmed. Chairwoman Hopkins. There's been a motion to confirm Anaya Gibson to the position of Secretary of Liberties and Representations. Is there a second? All those in favor say aye. All opposed? The ayes have it, the nominee is confirmed. Chairwoman Diapolito. The question is of the confirmation of the nominees to their respective positions and block. Is there a second? All those in favor say aye. All opposed? The ayes have it, the nominees are confirmed. Vice Chairman Von Cannon. Technically, it's for anything. I am asking that we finish the confirmations first, just so we can suspend the rules, have them be sworn in, and then we'll do everything else. Does that make sense? Chairman Spurgeon. The question is of the approval of the nominees and block. Is there a second? All those in favor say aye. All opposed? The ayes have it, the nominees are confirmed. Chairwoman Diapolito. Is there another? Chairman Matthews? Heard but not recognized, was there a motion to confirm the Secretary of Academics? Because I know that was supposed to happen today. Is there a motion to confirm? Chairwoman Cumby? Senator Jacobson? Is there a motion to confirm Jacob Booten to the position of Secretary of Academics? Is there a second? All those in favor say aye. All opposed? The ayes have it, the nominee is confirmed. I do just want to clarify, the speaker does have the power to ask, is there a motion? That's not me personally endorsing any candidate for any positions. Is there a motion to suspend the rules? Is there a second? Without objection so ordered, all y'all can come on down to take your oaths of office. Speaker Pro Tempore Miles is going to do that. Senator Jacobson, you are okay. Don't stress about that. Is there a motion to restate the rules? Is there a second? Without objection, so ordered. Senator Matthews. There's been a motion to add the recommendation to permit the Finance Committee to allocate funds to the first reading calendar. Is there a second? All those in favor say aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. The legislation is added to the first reading calendar and granted the legislative number of 18. Chairwoman Diapolito. There's been a motion to add the bill pertaining to allocation request submission timelines to the first reading calendar. Is there a second? All those in favor say aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. The legislation is added to the first reading calendar and granted the legislative number of 19. Senator Cassetti. There's been a motion to remove Senator Cassetti from the Liberties and Representations Committee. Is there a second? Without objection, so ordered. Chairwoman Gopal. There's been a motion to remove Chairwoman Gopal from the Powers and Responsibilities Committee. Is there a second? Without objection, so ordered. I also totally forgot. We're doing a new thing now. Group me's are going to be on you guys because you do have the power to leave them at any time. So it's up there in alphabetical order. The one without a cute little profile picture is Liberties and Representation. We'll fix that. So if you join a committee, you can just take out your phone and scan it, and then you're in the group me. Speaker Pro Tempore Miles. There's been a motion to remove Senator Walker from the Powers and Responsibilities Committee. Is there a second? Without objection, so ordered. Speaker Pro Tempore Miles. There's been a motion to remove Senator Walker from the Liberties and Representation Committee. Is there a second? Without objection, so ordered. Speaker Pro Tempore Miles, if you'll tell her she can just leave those. Okay, next on the Chairwoman Diapolito. Does the sponsor find this amendment friendly or unfriendly? Seeing no objections, this legislation or this amendment is now adopted. Senator Whatley. There's been a motion to remove Senator Whatley from the Academics Committee. Is there a second? Without objection, so ordered. Senator Baldinger. There's been a motion to remove Senator Baldinger from the Powers and Responsibilities Committee. Is there a second? Without objection, so ordered. Senator Fry. There's been a motion to remove Senator Fry from the Liberties and Representation Committee. Is there a second? Will you check it then? Without objection, so ordered. Senator Wisenet. There's been a motion to remove Senator Wisenet from the Powers and Responsibilities Committee. Is there a second? Without objection, so ordered. Am I saying your last name right or am I saying it wrong? Wisenet. Okay, got it. Sorry. Senator Von Cannon. There's been a motion to remove Senator Kirby from the Academics Committee. Is there a second? Without objection, so ordered. Senator Von Cannon. There's been a motion to remove Senator Grant Hunter from the Liberties and Representations Committee. Is there a second? Without objection, so ordered. Senator Von Cannon. There's been a motion to remove Senator Grant Hunter from the Student Life Committee. Yes. Is there a second? Without objection, so ordered. Senator Von Cannon. Does the sponsor find this amendment friendly or unfriendly? Without objections, this legislation or this amendment is now adopted. Senator Von Cannon. All right, there's been a motion to omnibus SBL 117, 13, and 14. This point of information, that means the two legislation have to do with similar topics. So instead of the senator getting up to speak about two separate pieces of legislation, he can just discuss both of them at once. Is there a second? All those in favor of omnibus say aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. SBL 117, 13 and SBL 117, 14 will be discussed congruently within the first reading calendar. Senator Von Cannon. There's been a motion to add Senator Von Cannon as a co-sponsor to SBL 117-12. Is there a second? All those in favor say aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. Senator Von Cannon is added as a co-sponsor to SBL 11712. Chairman Matthews. Does the sponsors find this amendment friendly or unfriendly? Without objections, this amendment is now adopted. Senator Lapsley. 6 minutes. Are there any, heard but not recognized, or for recess for me to fix a thing? Are there any other motions on the floor? Okay. Seeing none, is there a motion to recess for 6 minutes until 6:51? So move second. All those in favor say aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. We are now in a recess until 6:51. Come to order. We're continuing with the motion period. Are there any other motions on the floor at this time? We're sure. We're missing some senators. Senator Galvin. Yeah, which piece of legislation? You got it. 03? For how long? Indefinitely, a period, or? Okay, there's been a motion to table SBL 11703 indefinitely. Is there a second? All those in favor say aye. All opposed? The ayes have it, the legislation is tabled indefinitely. Senator Jacobson. Okay, that's, I don't even know the codes on that. Like, how on their way are they? Okay. Okay, there's senators, how many senators are missing? Just. All right, they're going to be marked as unexcused during voting if that happens while they're gone. Are there any other motions on the floor at this time? Seeing no more motions, is there a motion to dispense of this motion period? Is there a second? Without objection, so ordered. We are now on the call of the introduction of new legislation. The clerk will now read.
SBL 11711, sponsored by Senator Von Cannon, a recommendation to improve the draining system of Black Bridge, encourage maintenance to perform routine checks on the area, and to alleviate hazardous areas that put students at risk.
Senator Von Cannon, you are recognized to speak on the legislation. And point of information, that title was just amended during the motion period. I do the script like at 1 a.m. the night before Senate, so it doesn't know amendments.
All right, hi, so this is a bill, I was thinking about something like this before I even became senator, because I live at Bates West, and just living there, I mean, the Black Bridge, it really doesn't take much for the bridge to have standing water. The drainage system is obviously not working. Most of the time when I walk by, I like to check the drains. I would say about 80% of the times the drains are clogged, they look dirty, kind of showing maybe some neglect, maybe some encouragement on behalf of maintenance to get them to check it more often. Just pursuing talks with them to fix the drainage. Obviously, within a couple weeks ago when we had a lot of pollen, not only is there standing water, then there's pollen, then the water is yellow, then it stains your clothes. Happened to me, not fun. But also, I've also noticed slips and falls. This is something that when I was campaigning, a lot of students would come to me and say that they've slipped, they've fallen, or they've had to, when it floods, you have to walk around it on this little ledge, not a ledge, but where they put like the bike racks and there's a little awning. You have to walk on that and then walk on the middle part if you really care about not getting your shoes and socks soaked. And if you do, just say whatever, I'm going to do it, then your shoes and socks are soaked for the rest of the day. I think basically, especially concerning, I mean, I've slipped and fallen as well, but when it comes to damage to students, I shouldn't say damage, when it comes to hazards and personal injury, that's definitely something that needs to be improved. Also, I've noticed there are these grates at the bottom of the bridge. When you go down the slope, they easily become unlodged, and usually for about a week, they don't get put back because I don't know, I guess maintenance isn't really checking up on it. And it's also happened to me one time where you'll be walking and you don't expect the ground beneath you to just disappear, and one of the grates is unlodged, your foot gets stuck in there. So with this bill, I'm hoping to work with maintenance and communicate with them just how dramatic an issue this is, and work on ways to fix it and bring attention to the issue. I think that's bringing attention to it is one of the most important parts of it. So I yield my time to questions.
The senator yields his time to questions. Are there any questions? Just a reminder, I know it's tedious, but questions are going to be asked at the microphones. I know. Guys, I promise you it could be worse. When my dad was on town council, open question forum would go for like 3 hours. Senator Collum.
Okay, so my question is, have you communicated with relevant university leadership or administration regarding your legislation?
I've looked on the university website to see who I could reach out on. I also noticed that, like, if the bill doesn't get passed, it would be tedious, and it would probably be not worth it. If the bill doesn't get passed, we don't have it, because we represent our students. So for each of us, if we pass the bill, it's us representing our students, making a mandate saying this is something that need to be fixed. So then if the bill did get passed, now I am already looking at some of the numbers. I have a doc with some numbers and some contacts that I could reach out to, but I also wanted to get a general feel on if other senators feel like this is an issue so that I can further pursue it, yeah.
Thank you.
Senator George.
Hi, are you open to amending this bill to include other areas of campus or just Blackbridge?
I feel like other areas of campus, since this is a bill specifically with my knowledge of Blackbridge, since I'm around that area, and I've had constituents personally come to me about specifically Blackbridge. I know there are obviously tons of areas of campus that have horrible drainage. I mean, it's really a problem. I would encourage them to write their own bill, because I feel like to add all of this into one bill, like Senator
Collum
said, when you add more areas of the school, you have more people to contact, and it just gets more and more, whereas if we diversified it and had different bills, I feel like people who are more knowledgeable of other areas of campus would be able to better, but if you want to work on something privately, because this drainage and student well-being is definitely something that I agree with, so I think I would say no to an amendment. I would definitely say they should pursue making their own bill.
Also, point of information, I talked about this if you're in Judiciary Committee yesterday, but our school works on like kind of a unique financial system. So like different areas of campuses are financed by different budgets. So like that can also play a part. Like the money that would go to Blackbridge wouldn't necessarily go to fixing Gambrell. Senator Ashmore.
It's not really a question, it's just there's construction like happening to
Yes.
the two bridges.
Yes.
I have just personally asked the construction workers, like, hey, is there gonna be any improvements? Pretty much what I'm saying is they're working on it. So I do like this bill, and I do think that it also needs to happen, because I also live in Bates West, and my family, so I had a meeting on Monday, but I'm just letting you know, like, there are improvements, but they're
Yeah.
not fast.
I know, yeah. One of the reasons also why I wanted this to get done now is that they have the whole summer while they're messing around with all the connections and stuff. Just bringing up to them that this is a problem. And as you say, they are working on things. But yeah, that's basically the point of this bill, is to seek avenues and also bring attention to the issue, which helps maintenance know, oh, this is an issue. But yeah.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for the senator? Seeing none, this legislation is now referred to the Health and Safety Committee. Continuing on with the call of new legislation, the clerk will now read.
SBL 11712, sponsored by Senator Lewis, a recommendation to limit and remove unexpected class fees.
Point of information, this was also amended to include Senator Von Cannon as a co-sponsor. The sponsors are recognized to speak on this legislation.
Yeah, so basically this recommendation is pretty straightforward. It talks about limiting and removing those unexpected class fees that pop up. So after you go to your first year of class, and your professor tells you need to buy all these books or software programs that was never told to you when you registered for your class, or was never on the website. Part of working for this, I've met with the Board of Trustee member. Me and him had a great conversation just yesterday about this. Beginning negotiation with the Faculty Senate to try to get some things moving quickly to get this resolved. And I believe that, as Courtney said earlier, that she's going to start negotiations. So between the both of us, we're going to be working very hard to get these negotiations started and finalized really before the fall of 2025.
I'll just also add, this is something that I also campaigned on when I was running for Senate. Just the notion that, you know, you apply for classes, you know, late in the summer or late in the fall, and you get the syllabus, and it has maybe 1 or 2 textbooks, but you don't know if it's required. And then when you get to class, you've maybe already bought the textbook, and they say it's not required. And then also the fact of other, you know, like Top Hat and other things that you need. Just giving students a good amount of time, maybe while they're with their guardians as well, to find other avenues or find cheap books, whereas, you know, when you get to school, all these unexpected things happen, and there's not really a lot of stability. So just giving students a good amount of time for the first day of class on what is exactly expected of them and what is exactly required, I think would definitely be helpful.
Are there any questions for the sponsors? Do y'all yield your time to questions?
Yeah, we yield the questions.
Are there any questions? Microphone, if you're asking a question. There's been a motion to pass SBL 11712 by unanimous consent. What? Are there any questions? Seeing none, this legislation is now referred to the Academics Committee. Continuing on with the call of new legislation, the clerk will now read.
SBL 11713, sponsored by Senators Dorsey, Kirby, and Von Cannon, a recommendation to permit campus recreation to regain use of their own separate social media account.
The sponsors are recognized to speak on this legislation. Also, to clarify, we've seen unanimous consent where things have passed. That was a great example of when something didn't pass with unanimous consent. It only requires one person to object. Also, I mean, I'm not trying to speak on behalf of Chairman Matthews, but that was just to pass it by acclamation and say it shouldn't go to committee. So somebody could just be objecting because they don't want it to go to committee, not because they want it to go to committee, not just because they disagree with the premise of the bill. Y'all can continue. I'm sorry for interrupting.
So hello again. So it has been brought to my attention that over this past summer, Campus Recreation lost access to their own separate like Instagram account or other social media accounts, but I'm pretty sure they only have Instagram, and they had to consolidate with U of SC Health and Wellbeing, which has been brought to my attention that has limited their ability to spread information and awareness about other campus rec activities. So as a lot of y'all probably know, campus recreation encompasses a bunch of different avenues. So fitness classes, intramural sports, sports clubs, athletic training, if you name it, they most likely have it there. And their concern is that they're not able to reach all the people who are looking for that information. One bit of evidence that I received back from them was that their old Instagram account, which is still available to be viewed, has gained 549 new followers just in the past couple months alone, which does express an interest that people are still actively searching for this information about specific things. They are just unable to find it. So with that, I will yield my time to questions.
The sponsors yield their time to questions. Are there any questions for the sponsors?
The university just wanted to consolidate all their information, or a lot of their stuff, just into a specific place because they didn't like having tons of separate USC accounts. But I think that failed to take in consideration campus rec encompasses more than just one thing.
Yeah.
Is there like a website or something where this information is now posted, or is it only on that consolidated site?
So campus rec still has their own Instagram account. They just don't update it as regularly. So like for an example, like at a special event that they could have coming up wouldn't necessarily be posted on their website.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions for the senator? Seeing none, this legislation is now referred to the Student Life Committee. Continuing on with the call of new legislation, the clerk will now read.
SBL 11714, sponsored by Senator Von Cannon and Chairperson Koviak, a recommendation to update the first floor of the Gambrell Hall building to include charging stations and outlets for students' devices.
The sponsors are recognized to speak on this legislation.
Hi, sorry, I'm up here again, and am I also able to speak on 15?
Yeah, because these were omnibus.
So the reason why these are together, one, having classes in Gambrell, there's, especially in that first floor hall area, there's like, I think about 4 wooden seats. It could seat 3 people, but it's kind of awkward because you're like elbow to elbow. It's just wooden, like 4 wooden seats in that whole Gambrell area that has, I say in my bill, 3 floors, a computer basement, 28 different classrooms. The minimum of a classroom is 16 to the maximum of 282. Multiple multiple students have classes in there, and some of them, like myself, I'm a poli-sci major, and I have back-to-back classes. So for the chargers and outlets, for the back-to-back classes, most of the time, if you have a class and then you have a waiting period, you need to recharge your phone, you need to recharge your computer, and in that first floor area, there's no outlets, there's no charging stations. And then in the classrooms, there's usually only about like 2 outlets, and they're either at the back or in the front, and it's first come, first serve. If you don't get it, that's it. So I think adding some charging stations and outlets in that first floor hall area so that students who have classes there, because there's so many, and some of them, if you're a College of Arts and Science major, you may have multiple back-to-back classes and you don't have a chance to recharge your devices. I definitely think that would be helpful. I'll try to be quick. I know Senator Koviak had a short little excerpt because they weren't able to be here. Political science student, I have had the majority of my classes in Gambrell Hall. Through this experience, I know firsthand that many of the rooms in the building do not have ample options for charging to meet student needs, prevent students from sitting where it would be most functional for them to be able to see and hear the professor, quickly reach an exit, or prevent them from utilizing their devices. This problem creates a great deal of accessibility, concerns, and barriers for students in the classroom, especially for students with SDRC needs. Updating the first floor to have more options to recharge devices would help to alleviate many of these concerns for students who work and learn in Gambrell Hall. Further to that, why it's omnibus, while one could pass and one could fail, if we do add charging stations and outlets in that first floor hall, coincidentally, there would probably be a need for tables and more comfortable seating, chairs, couches, because right now all we have is about 4 wooden benches that can only really seat 2 people if you're comfortable, 3 people if you want to be elbow to elbow. So if we were to add charging stations and outlets, there would also be a need for table, kind of like how we have in Russell, tables, chairs around that area so that it can service more people comfortably. I yield my time to questions.
The senator yields his time to questions. Are there any questions for the senator? Senator Creighton.
I really love the idea. My only concern is foot traffic in like the main lobby area. As far as like, I love the idea of adding chargers and places to sit. However, do you think that that could impede on the overall area of that lobby area of Gambrell? Maybe like a study specified area or room?
Yeah, I mean, right now, the wooden benches are on the sides. They're not in the middle. I get that adding charging stations, we would try to, my hope is to put them, is to replace things in the tables in those corner areas so that they're not right in the middle of the area. But, you know, that's also a lot of empty space that I feel like isn't really used. I know there's foot traffic in between, but I think there'd definitely be some logistics to it. But I think the way it is now, it's this big, wide open area with 4 wooden benches that nobody really uses. And I feel like just getting rid of those things, they're old, it needs updating. And starting, I would say start with, and it can progress from there. I won't say drop something right in the middle of a charging station and then just fill out the whole hall. I'd say start small, start with where the benches are, replace those because they're not accessible, they're not helpful, and then work your way up from there is what I'm going to try to do.
Thank you for your clarification.
Yes.
Are there any other questions for the senator? Seeing none, and just a reminder, these pieces are omnibus. SBL 11714 and 11715 are both referred to the Academics Committee. Continuing on with the call of new legislation, the clerk will now read.
SBL 11716, sponsored by Senator Lewis, a resolution to honor the memory of Nathaniel Nate Baker.
Senator Lewis, you are recognized to speak on this legislation. Senator Creighton. There's been a motion to appoint Senator Silker as Senator Creighton's proxy. Is there a second? All those in favor say aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. The proxy is granted. Senator Creighton. Granted. Senator Lewis, you may continue.
Yeah, this is just pretty self-explanatory. This is the resolution to honor the life of Nate Baker, who died, last week by a tragedy accident. So I spoke with the IFC president about this, and, they're very on board with this. I talked to the fraternity president, and they're all, mourning the loss of this, and so they're struggling with that, and we're in collaboration with that, and so I yield for questions.
The senator yields his time to questions. Are there any questions? Chairman Matthews. Okay. Just to preface, unanimous consent is typically used for resolutions, so that's why that would be a motion in this case. There's been a motion to pass SBL 117-16 by unanimous consent. Seeing no objections, this legislation is now adopted. Congratulations, Senator Lewis, your first piece. Senator Lewis, you have another piece if you just want to. Continuing on with the call of new legislation, the clerk will now read.
SBL 117-17, sponsored by Senator Lewis, a resolution to welcome Coach Sarah Rumley Noble as the 12th head volleyball coach at the University of South Carolina.
Senator Lewis, you are recognized again.
Yeah, this is basically what it sounds like to recognize a new volleyball coach. I met with the Alumni Association and some of the athletics directors the other day. We're very excited to welcome the new volleyball coach, hopefully to sell out all the student tickets and get it jam-packed this season. She comes from a much experience needed to revamp the program, and I'll yield to questions.
The senator yields his time to questions. Are there any questions for the senator? Senator George? There's been a motion to pass SBL 117-17 by unanimous consent. Wait, was there an objection? Oh. Seeing no objections, this legislation is now adopted. Continuing on with the call of new legislation, the clerk will now read.
SBL 117-18, sponsored by the Finance Committee, a recommendation to permit the Finance Committee to allocate funds.
Chairman Matthews, you are recognized to speak on this legislation.
Hey guys, the numbers are dwindling. All right, so we have, I went over this before. It's approving $13,150.59. Y'all have access to the bill. I yield to questions.
The chairman yields his time to questions. Are there any questions? Senator Collum. There's been a motion to pass SBL 117-18 by unanimous consent. Okay. Are there any motions on the floor?
Motion to put to the second reading calendar. Motion to move SBL 116-18 or whatever was the second reading calendar.
Chairwoman Diapolito. There's been a motion to table SBL 117-18 indefinitely. Is there a second? All those in favor say aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. The legislation is tabled indefinitely. Chairman Matthews. There's been a motion to place SBL 117-18 on the second reading calendar contested. Is there a second? All those in favor say aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. SBL 117-18 is placed on the second reading calendar contested. This means that we will debate on this piece of legislation and then go through a roll call vote, so names, ayes, or nays. Continuing on with the call of new legislation, the clerk will now read.
SBL 117-19, sponsored by Chairpersons Matthews and Diapolito, a bill to remove a limit to allocation request submissions.
The sponsors are recognized to speak on this legislation.
Yeah, so this comes from the fact that we still have about $20,000 that we need to, that we would like to get rid of in the next week. It's so this money, if it does not go to student organizations, it will simply be going back to the university, and that's not a great look for us as an organization. We should be trying to make this money available to the student body. That is part of our purpose here, and so yeah, Kiki, go ahead if you have.
Yeah. Oops, sorry. This, as Jack said, it would be very important for us to use the money. It's part of our purpose, and it will also help for any threats of lowering our budget in the future. Because if we're using the money, they're like, oh, you need the money. Also, I have talked to Ashley and I have talked to Jack I know I've heard some concerns about that this might bring a bigger workload to both of them and their committee and branch, but they both are eager to get this started and help out the students. We yield to questions.
The sponsors yield their time to questions. Are there any questions? Senator Davis. There's been a motion to pass SBL 11719 by unanimous consent.
Motion to table?
There's been a motion to table SBL 11719. Is there a period of time?
Indefinitely.
There's been a motion to table SBL 11719 indefinitely. Is there a second? All those in favor say aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. The legislation is tabled indefinitely. Chairman Matthews. There's been a motion to place SBL 11719 on the second reading contested calendar. Is there a second? All those in favor say aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. The legislation is placed on the second reading contested calendar. All right. And just a reminder, just make sure you wait till I recognize you, just for like clarity's sake. Continuing on with the call of new legislation, the clerk will now read. Hearing none, that completes the call of new legislation. We are now on the call of the uncontested legislation. The clerk will now read.
SBL 117-1, introduced by Senators Wisenet, Lapsley, Freer, a recommendation to enhance transparency of Strom Thurmond Wellness and Fitness Center occupancy data.
The senators are recognized to speak on this legislation.
All right, so this is a very easy recommendation. This is just a recommendation to Strom Thurmond to allow students and staff to have access to whether or not they're super busy or not busy at all at any given period of time. This isn't out of the ordinary. This is something the university already provides with the Waits app for both Russell House and Thomas Cooper Library.
I have nothing else to say on it.
And I have reached out to the associate director that is over Strom to set up a meeting to talk about just this. And with that, I yield to questions.
The sponsors yield their time to questions. Are there any questions for the sponsors? Seeing none, we will now move to a voice vote on this legislation. All those in favor of passage say aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. The legislation is now adopted. Congratulations, first piece. Continuing on with the call of the uncontested legislation, the clerk will now read.
SBL 117-2, introduced by Senator Dorsnowski, a recommendation to implement better course planning software in Self-Service Carolina.
The senator is recognized to speak on this legislation.
All right, so again, this one is just about the schedule planner in Self-Service Carolina and how that was removed. And now we are left with the Plan Ahead software, which I had to use this morning, and I don't like it. I think it's pretty bad. A lot of other students have similar complaints, and so this recommendation is basically to bring back Schedule Planner or find something similar, but it's basically just to let the university know that students do care about this and they miss the old Schedule Planner software, and they'd like to either bring it back or find something similar to it. And with that, I yield to questions.
The senator yields his time to questions. Are there any questions for the senator? Seeing none, we will now move to a voice vote on this legislation. All those in favor of passage say aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. The legislation is now adopted. Continuing on with the call of the uncontested legislation, the clerk will now read.
SBL 117-5, sponsored by Chairwoman Doppolito, a bill to require business professional dress for interviews conducted by the Powers and Responsibilities Committee.
Chairwoman Doppolito, you are recognized to speak on this legislation.
Hey guys, as I explained before, this is just kind of to uphold the integrity of student government. If you have any questions about what a professional and appropriate attire means, that is up to the discretion of the chairperson of the committee for that term. I yield to questions.
The chairwoman yields her time to questions. Are there any questions for the chairwoman? Seeing none, we will now move to a voice vote on this legislation. All those in favor of passage say aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. The legislation is now adopted. Continuing on with the call of the uncontested legislation, the clerk will now read.
SBL 1177, sponsored by Chairwoman Doppolito, a bill to edit the timeline of the Vice President's staff selection.
Chairwoman Diapolito, you are recognized to speak on this legislation.
Hey guys, I'm back. This one is also self-explanatory. There just is no reason the vice president should have staff positions filled upon their inauguration. So this just fixing that mistake and making it identical to what the president has under their codes. I yield to questions.
The chairwoman yields her time to questions. Are there any questions for the chairwoman? Seeing none, thank you. We will now move to a voice vote on this legislation. All those in favor of passage say aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. This legislation is now adopted. Continuing on with the call of the uncontested legislation, the clerk will now read.
SBL 1179, sponsored by Chairman Matthews, a bill to allocate funds for student government for the fiscal year 2025 to 2026.
Chairman Matthews, you are recognized to speak on this legislation.
Yeah, so this is just our internal budget. It was like something close to 62 grand. I believe, point of information, was it passed by all committees?
If it's on the uncontested calendar, yes.
Okay, alright, cool. So, yeah, so you have all had a chance to see this. If you have any questions, fire away. I yield to questions.
The chairman yields his time to questions. Are there any questions for the chairman? Seeing none, we will now move to a voice vote on this legislation. All those in favor of passage say aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. This legislation is now adopted. Continuing on with the call of the uncontested legislation, the clerk will now read. Hearing none, that completes the call of the uncontested legislation. We are now on the call of the contested legislation. The clerk will now read.
SBL 1174, introduced by Speaker Pro Tempore Miles, Vice Chairman Fry, Senator Walker, a recommendation to add donation mailboxes as a permanent fixture on campus for organizational use.
The sponsors are recognized to speak on the legislation. I did see, was there a question? Student Life met later than normal this week, and so they didn't get to review the legislation until after the calendar was published.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Hi, guys. So essentially, this recommendation is about wanting to replace the current use of cardboard boxes as donation collection sites and replace it with a semi-permanent fixture that the orgs can utilize, much like the tables that they have through 25 Live. And this is to both increase the possible yield of donation collections and increase student engagement with campus orgs. And all sponsors have begun to start conversations about the feasibility of this recommendation with both the Office of the Provost and the LSC Director, Ambra Hyatt. So we're just waiting to set up an agreed-upon meeting time to sit down and discuss, and we yield to questions.
The sponsors yield their time to questions. Are there any questions for the sponsors? Seeing none, thank you. We will now move into a period of debate on this legislation. Are there any other senators wishing to speak on this topic? Chairman Spurgeon, you are recognized.
Sorry, guys, that took me a second. I was not fully tracking there for a second. So the reason it was found unfavorable by the committee was because it correctly identifies a problem that's found on campus, but we didn't find the solution fully satisfactory. We think that donation boxes in the same location, and first of all, we're happy to hear that talks are in works with people who can implement that and work through the logistics and solve some of those problems. But I think it would be better fit if some of those solutions were included inside of legislation. We don't really know how many boxes we would need to set up based on how many donations would happen. It's also not well defined throughout, if a smaller club wants to use and a larger org at the same time, how do you establish who gets it? So that's another logistical problem that should be talked about before jumping right into a solution. And it also doesn't, maybe this could be future legislation or an amendment, but doing it in central campus doesn't, it could just be a box that's out in Russell House somewhere where people don't necessarily always see it. So it's there, but that doesn't mean that it really solves the problem of accessibility. So what we really would want to see is boxes in multiple spots over campus and a system campus-wide to collaborate between all of those. So it's just, we didn't think it was all the way fully worked out. I yield questions.
The chairman yields his time to questions. Are there any questions? Microphones if we're going to be asking questions, please. Speaker Pro Tempore Miles.
So essentially, I talked about this in the recommendation that you guys reviewed, and it was recommending that we start with 2 mailboxes, and essentially that would be through 25 Live, so organizations could donate it, could go through 25 Live to access it like they would tables first come, first serve. And then it would also be on their end to promote it, and basically, the donation boxes would be much like the standard donation boxes of other organizations who do take donations that are like off campus, as you can see. So essentially, the clubs would use these mailboxes, but they wouldn't be like in Russell House. They would be on Green Street, so it's student foot traffic. I yield the question.
Senator Lapsley? Or do you have an answer, Senator Spurgeon?
I do. Do we need to recognize that first, or can I answer?
No, because that was the question she had.
Okay, so Green Street's great. That still doesn't, 25 Live sounds good, but that doesn't really solve the problem if someone else wants to use it at the same time.
Questions? We're going to use the microphones. Sorry, I'm going to keep repeating myself. Sorry. Or statements.
Yeah, this is just a statement. I like the expounding on it, but that wasn't in the bill that we were given. That's why we found it unfavorable. So it's nice that we're like expounding on it, but the reason why we found it unfavorable is because it wasn't expounded upon. Not saying that this can't be brought up again, but we're explaining it further than what we were given as the student rep committee. This is my opinion.
Speaker Pro Tempore Miles.
I just feel as though it's utilizing the same way that the tables would be, and it's first come, first served. And I yield the question.
Senator Aluko.
When I was looking at this legislation, I thought that, like, this is 2025, a lot of people do, like, online things like Zelle, Cash App, Venmo. And I feel like having, like, a mailbox just wouldn't be easy. Some people feel like electrical don't use anymore than just cash, so I just didn't see, like, the need for it.
I also will say if the sponsor or the members of this committee feel like there's like an ongoing discussion, a Robert's Rules thing in this is that you could table it for a period of 1 week and work on an amendment. And like, I'm not suggesting that, but if that's something that people feel like would be a solution. Speaker Pro Tempore Miles.
So essentially, it's not for monetary donations. Skip force them to take monetary donations. They usually have a cardboard box where they take objects as donations. And that's what I was working towards here.
Senator Lapsley.
Yes. Did the committee have time to come up with an amendment?
No, we didn't find an amendment because we thought it'd be restructuring the whole thing basically. So we wouldn't do that. I think I forgot what I was about to say. What was the last thing that Speaker Pro Tempore Miles said? Okay. Yeah. Going back to before the last round of microphones, the committee didn't feel that, like, I'm glad that there's a lot of thought that's going in behind this, but we didn't feel it would make sense to find favorable legislation without it being expanded upon, or passing something just on the basis of a good idea without having a lot of elaboration or thought. And so I'm glad it's happened, but we'd want to see that written out.
Chairwoman Diapolito.
Another thing that we discussed at the committee was we didn't like, is it that their clause or that clause that says the boxes are both going to be placed at Russell House. We understand why it was said that that's like somewhere most students are, but there is a lot of the times when some students can't make it to Russell. So we also thought it would make more sense if the boxes were spread out rather than two in the same exact place. Because if you're going to that place, you can walk upstairs or in front to grab the box. I yield to the well.
Sorry, to clarify, when you get up, if you're just making a statement, that would be a point of information. I would say typically this time is used for responses to what Senator Spurgeon said. If you have individual viewpoints that you would like to share, you would get up and be recognized as a speaker at the well. Does this make sense? So are there any other questions or points of information relevant to what Senator Spurgeon has said today? Chairwoman Diapolito. You're okay. We're all working on it together. Are there any other questions for Chairman Spurgeon? Right. Thank you, Chairman Spurgeon. Are there any other senators wishing to speak on this matter before we move into a roll call vote? Okay. Seeing no more speakers on this period of debate, we will now move to a roll call vote on this legislation. All those in favor of passage of SBL 11704 say aye. All those in favor of not passing say nay. If you are proxying, say proxy and aye. Please make sure you really speak up because it's hard to tell the difference between aye or nay. The clerk will call the roll.
Alogo. Anderson. Ashmore. Baldinger. Brazier. Costello. Santiago Cedillo. Churchill. Collum. Koviak. Creedon. Cumby. Doppolito. Davis. Dorsey. Dworzhnowski. Erler. Freer. Fry. Govan. Gay. George. Gopel. Hopkins. Grant Hunter. Zanasia Hunter. Iftikhar. Jacobson. Cassetti. Keenan. Kern. Kirby. Lapsley. Lewis. Matthews. Miles. Sams. Sanders. Spurgeon. Silkert. Talaka. Von Cannon. Walker. Wizenant. Watley.
Have all senators voting and present answered the call, including proxies? Right? Okay. We're giving it a second to tabulate the votes. Also, per the rules of procedure, this does require a majority of voting senators here and present, which includes proxies. There's 41 of us today, so that would require 22 votes or above. By a vote of 23 ayes to 20 noes, this legislation is now adopted. Yeah, congratulations, first piece. Okay, continuing on with the call of the contested legislation, the clerk will now read.
SBL 117-6, sponsored by Senators Wizenant, Lapsley, Jacobson, Walker, Miles, Govan, Dworzhnowski, a bill to reform the legislation certification process.
The sponsors are recognized to speak on this legislation. Also, the amendment that was introduced for this bill has now been reflected in the public information folder.
Yeah. No. If they want to question it, we'll have at it. All right, so the bill's kind of straightforward. Control C, Control V. I yield the questions.
The sponsors yield their time to questions. Are there any questions for the sponsors? If it's questions, we're using the microphones. You're okay. And if it's an individual viewpoint, you would just get up and speak during the period of debate. We're working through it.
So
Senator Von Cannon.
Was the amendment accepted or denied? The amendment presented, wasn't it who presented the amendment to it? About or was that I believe that was the committee saying it was contested. Was there amendment to it or not?
Yes, there was, and it was found friendly. When it was found unfriendly, it was found unfriendly with amendment, which is outlined in our rules of procedure. So that means that the committee was like, we disagree with it, but this is a better suggestion.
And did they accept the amendment?
Yes.
Okay, and then could you read
Yeah, so it is reflected on there. Before it discussed giving the speaker and the chief justice like joint power to update and edit the codes in a separate new section in chapter 2. Their amendment, I believe, moved it to chapter 5 or 6, going off the top of my head here. And it gives the speaker 10 university days following the 5 university day protocol it's already outlined.
Thank you.
Yep. Do y'all have any content things to add, sponsors? Right, any other questions? Seeing none, we will now move to a period of debate on this legislation. Do any senators wish to speak on this matter? All right, seeing none, we will now move to a roll call vote, and y'all are welcome to yield the well as well. The clerk will call the roll.
We yield to the will.
Aloko. Anderson. Ashmore. Baldinger. Brazier. Costello. Santiago Cedillo. Churchill. Collum. Koviak. Creedon. Cumby. Doppolito. Davis. Dorsey. Dorsanowski. Erler. Freer. Fry. Govan. Gay. George. Gopel. Hopkins. Grant Hunter. Zanasia Hunter. Iftikhar. Jacobson. Cassetti. Keenan. Kern. Kirby. Lapsley. Lewis. Matthews. Miles. Sams. Sanders. Spurgeon. Silkert. Talaka. Von Cannon. Walker. Wizenant. Watley.
Have all senators voting in present answered the call? By a vote of 41 ayes, 1 abstention, and one no, the legislation is adopted. I would like to clarify before I stated that there were 41 senators, there are 43. That is my mistake. Continuing on with the call of the contested legislation, the clerk will now read.
SBL 11710, sponsored by Chairwoman Doppolito, a bill to revise Chapter 3 of the Student Government Codes.
The chairwoman is recognized to speak on this legislation.
As explained before, this was just voted unfavorable because of the one line that put a $10,000 limit on allocation requests. We have an amendment that is on there that just clarifies there's a $10,000 limit on allocation requests for non-university vendors, because it's illegal and it doesn't really work out when we try to request over $10,000 for non-university vendors. I yield to questions.
The chairwoman yields her time to questions. Are there any questions for the chairwoman? Seeing none, we will now move to a period of debate on this legislation. Are there any senators looking to speak on this matter? Senator Collum. Yes, you can motion for that at any time. Right. There's been a motion to pass SBL 11710 by unanimous consent. Seeing no objections, this legislation is now adopted. Continuing on with the call of the contested legislation, the clerk will now read.
SBL 11718, sponsored by the Finance Committee, a recommendation to permit the Finance Committee to allocate funds.
Chairman Matthews, you're recognized to speak on this legislation.
Yeah, I mean, this is just the weekly funding allocation bill. It's got about $13,000 in it. It's fairly standard, so I yield my time to questions.
The chairman yields his time to questions. Are there any other questions for the chairman? Seeing none, thank you. We will now move to a period of debate on this matter. Are there any other senators wishing to speak on this matter? Okay. We will now move, Senator Matthews. Okay. We will now move to a roll call vote on this legislation. The clerk will call the roll. All those in favor of passage say aye. All opposed say nay.
Aloco. Anderson. Ashmore. Baldinger. Brazier. Costello. Santiago Cedillo. Churchill. Column. Koviak. Creedon.
Creedon, proxy.
Cumby. Doppolito. Davis. Dorsey. Dorsnowski. Erler. Freer. Fry. Govan. Gay. George. Gopel. Hopkins. Grant Hunter. Zanasia Hunter. Iftikhar. Jacobson. Cassetti. Keenan. Kern. Kirby. Lapsley. Lewis. Matthews. Miles. Sams. Sanders. Spurgeon. Silkert. Talaka. Von Cannon. Walker. Wizenant. Watley.
All right. By a vote of 42 ayes to 1 abstention, this legislation is now adopted. Continuing on with the call of the contested legislation. Sorry to move through, but we do need to be done by 8. Continuing on with the call of the contested legislation, the clerk will now read.
SBL 11719, sponsored by Chairpersons Matthews and Doppolito, a bill to remove a limit to allocation request submissions.
The chairpersons are recognized to speak on this legislation. I do really fast want to interject and just provide a point of information that the same way you can pass anything by unanimous consent, you can also motion to change something from a roll call vote to a voice vote if it passes through Senate. Y'all do have to vote to approve that. Chairpersons are recognized to speak.
Yes, I mean, I am very willing to talk with you guys about this bill, because it is kind of a last-minute change here. It is changing the timeline a little bit, and it is essentially going to extend the deadline for student organizations, in this case, by a week. In normal circumstances, I believe it would be 2 weeks. But really, with the reason why this was, I think it was Kiki's original idea, why this, or maybe it was Ashley's, I don't know. But the reason why we're doing this is simply because we have money, and it's not really our job to gatekeep it, and if we don't spend it, it's just going to go back to the organization. So we feel we may as well open this back up. But if anybody has objections to that, please, I mean, it is a worthwhile thing to debate.
Also, what was I just? Also, yeah, it's very important. As Senate, we represent the students, so it doesn't make sense for us, at least in my opinion, if we have the money, why we are gatekeeping it. Also, as I said before, the Treasurer's Branch and Finance Committee knows that they might have an extra workload than usual extending this, but they're ready to handle that. We yield to question.
Senator Jacobson.
Point of information, it was actually 3 weeks previously. You said it was 2 weeks. It was previously 3 weeks because of 15 days, which is.
Right. What I meant was that this, under normal circumstances, like if this were to stay in effect for like years to come, this would give organizations an additional 2 weeks. So there's that 3-week period leading up to the last Senate session that organizations cannot request funds. This would have reduced that to 1 week. So it's an additional 2 weeks. That's what I meant.
Are there any other questions for the sponsors? Seeing none, we will now move to a period of debate on this legislation. Do any senators wish to speak on this matter? Senator George? Okay, there's been a motion to pass this by a voice vote instead of a roll call vote. Is there a second? All those in favor say aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. We will now move to a voice vote on this legislation. We will now move to a voice vote on the passage of the legislation SBL 11719. All those in favor of passage say aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. This legislation is adopted. Continuing on with the call of the contested legislation, the clerk will now read. Hearing none, that completes the call of the contested legislation. We are now in line for a period of open discussion. Does any senator wish to bring a matter of attention to the body at this time? Seeing none, we are now in line for a period of announcements. Are there any announcements from the floor? Senator Silkert. Yeah, sorry.
Okay, hey guys, sorry, but super duper quick. A friend of mine works for a leadership organization, pretty widespread, that supports student government leaders, and he wanted me to let you all know that there's a conference in DC where you get to meet other student government leaders. And if you want more information or are interested in going, it's going to be in late June in DC, and you can text me or hit me up on GroupMe, and I'll give you more info. I yield.
Senator, yields your time to questions. Are there any questions? Seeing none, thank you. Are there any other announcements from the floor? Awesome. I do have a quick one. I promise I'm going to make it quick. We talked about SG-wide. As I mentioned, that is codified that y'all are required to go. However, I do know that this is outside of our regularly scheduled time. We are going to be using the same attendance policy, so you just submit it underneath the normal excuse form. You don't have to put a proxy. You can just kind of select random buttons and just say that you're going to be missing SG-wide. You're going to email Addison the same way, but there will be extra things that will be excused just because I know that you guys don't have Senate that day. So if you're scheduled to work, that is totally okay. If you have class during that time, that's totally okay. Club meeting that normally happens during that time, you're totally okay. If you're a committee that meets on that day, and you're the chairperson of that committee, come to me and let's have a conversation about possibly rescheduling or y'all being excused because of that. But very lenient with attendance on SG-wide. Just the important thing is, as I talked about in my original report, communication. If you don't tell me that you're not going to be at SG-wide, you will be marked unexcused, even if you have a perfectly valid excuse, because I won't know. Senator Jacobson, and I yield my time to questions. Just email Addison. We're gonna do attendance at the very beginning, so we'll go from there, but I will notice if y'all leave, because I'm kind of watching. So definitely make sure you're giving us a heads up so we're not confused. Chairwoman Diapolito. If you just have a question, when somebody yields to questions, you just talk. If you have a question regarding parliamentary procedure, how to do something, so Senator Collins' question, that's a point of inquiry that has to do with parliamentary procedure, rules of procedure, codes, constitution. If you have something to say, point of information. Chairwoman Diapolito. Okay, sorry. Senator Talaka. No, it's what President Tax was talking about during her report. Actually, the chiefs of staff plan it, so I haven't really had a hand in it. It's Addison. Basically, the purpose of it is Senate is, y'all are lucky because you get to be super well educated about what's going on in the different branches of student government, but not everybody gets these weekly updates that y'all do, and they also don't get updates about what you do. This first one is going to be very casual, and it's just going to be basically anybody that's a part of student government from any committee, Senate, all the way up to the executive members. We're all going to get together, get some food, and kind of just commingle so you get to meet other people in this organization outside of the specific Senate branch. And I do believe we'll have a speaker there. I just don't remember who it is, unfortunately. Are there any other questions? Seeing no more questions, is there a motion to adjourn? Is there a second? Without objection, the Senate will now stand adjourned until Wednesday, April 16th, 2025. Please don't forget to give your placard.